I'll admit that most of those customers still use email in a fairly basic way. So my raison d'etre tends to be getting people from the basic end of using email for comms, newsletters, to doing cleverer things like using automation. And what I want to do just in a few minutes today is talk to you about my approach to helping customers with behavioral change campaigns, and we'll look specifically at getting people more active as an example of that. And there's 7 steps, of which the most important is the measurement. But if we go through the others, we'll see how they then help us to measure, because from a technology perspective, I can't tell you how many more people are visiting your leisure centres or taking a run in the park. But I can create opportunities to track other digital behaviours, which will give us a bellwether as to how effective our comms are being at driving people to take those behavioural changes. Okay, so first off, we have the introduction, and that will typically start with something like a website, a landing page, where you will be promoting to people the fact that they can get involved in various things to improve their health and get more active. And this is one of these things which time and again I see public sector organisations fall down. If we look at this example, Healthier You, NHS Diabetes Prevention Programme, great landing page. However, to actually access the programme and access further resources, you need your NHS number, blood test results, date of the blood test, your height and weight, and there's no way to go forward in that journey unless you've got all that information. So what I would strongly recommend, when you're considering creating email campaigns and digital campaigns more generally, to encourage behavioural change and to track them, it's really, really important that we minimise the barriers to entry and capture something as simple as an email address. An email address is all you need to then be able to communicate with people, and indeed to then start measuring subsequent interactions. And this is an example from one of our customers, Colchester City Council. They have Leisure World, and they have 2 options: either the main leisure centre newsletter, or indeed the wellbeing health referral specific one. But the most important thing is here, we're making it easy for people to say, yes, I could do with a hand here, I'd like more information. What's very, very important is then we follow up on that, and we follow up on it well and quickly. Okay, so what's known in the email world as an autoresponder, a welcome email. Hello, thanks for giving your email address. Let's start you on that journey. Okay, so this is what I call a triggered campaign. And the reason I keep it as simple usually as an email address on the initial form is, yes, there probably is a value to segmentation, but I can do that at a subsequent step. Now I've got your email address. Tell me more about you. Tell me your age range. The very common selection we have on forms is, I do less than 30 minutes of exercise a day, 30 to 149 plus. And the other thing is, is there anything specific or unique about you which can help us tailor the information and advice we give to you? A very big customer called Sport England, they have databases in the millions, but they have very specific resources to help people find a way to get active which is specific to them. So in that initial stage, all we need is an email address. Then we can find out a little bit more about people. Once we have that information, we can then start to segment, and indeed we can start to automate. So when I say an autoresponder, a single email, what that tends to lead to is more emails in an automated triggered sequence. Okay. And you may have noticed on my original slide, I doff my hat to the COM-B model as well: capability, opportunity, motivation. Certainly from the perspective of what I see others doing, everyone has the capability, and we probably need some content, or we probably already have some content to address that. And in that early stage of the process, it's a good opportunity. It's a good idea to address those things with them. We also have the opportunity, every council has plenty of options, and there are so many resources now available to people, so there is always the opportunity. The third one, the motivation, is probably where we need to then go long term. And when I say email 3 in the sense of an automation 1, 2, 3, email 3 probably then leads on to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 100 plus, when we're talking about long-term behavioral change. But when I look at what works as far as motivating people to actually change behavior and to stick with things. There'll be that initial period of desire, but they don't follow through with the action to actually start changing their behaviors. They in turn will encourage people to use other tools like Strava to track their progress. So taking people on a journey, we often talk about testimonials, case studies, the customer story. Think of email as a way to act as a guide for people on their own journey. As you start running, as you start going to the gym, as you start swimming, here are tools to help you track your progress. Here are tools to give you that motivation. And what we absolutely know is motivation. If someone's going to stick with something and make a habit, it has to be voluntary. They have to want to do it. They have to be active in it, and making it public is a good shout as well. And this is where email is a really, really useful way of actually getting people to say to the rest of the world, hey, look, I'm doing these things. This is an example from Sheffield City Council Cycle to School Week. When you sign up and take the pledge to Cycle to School, you are offered the opportunity to put in an email address, and then they will send you the fact that you've taken a pledge and some resources for you to share on all the social channels that you have made that pledge. Because obviously you're committing to a council that you're going to get fit is less motivating than saying to family, to friends, to people around you, hey, I'm doing this, and here's my pledge. And indeed that in turn can drive others into the same programs. We take motivation and we turn it into gamification. So if you've ever used Duolingo, I know it's not health, but I always think it's a great example. If you've ever used Duolingo to learn a language, you have to keep your streak safe. You have to do it every day. And you build a relationship with a little owl who congratulates you when you've done what you said you'd do. But if you don't, then you can be in real trouble. And that's where, again, when we're thinking about automation, it's not possible when we think about newsletters to send emails which are individual to each person to help them through their journey. We have to use segmentation. We have to use automation to be very targeted and send the right message to the right person at the right time. And funnily, when people are motivated to change, to change their own behaviors, they will have a high tolerance for repeated comms. So it is possible to send people an awful lot of communication via email because, can anyone remember an email they didn't read in their Hotmail account from yesterday? If you didn't see it, and don't worry about it, but it is one of these channels where you can continue chipping away at people, trying to drive them to make the behavior changes that you want. Okay. And I just wanted to share an example of someone who I've seen doing it well. Richmond have the Richmond upon Thames Move for a Healthier Borough campaign, and they have a 9 email sequence. Welcome to the program, and they signpost and guide you through various opportunities to get involved in the various activities that they have on offer. And that culminates in a 9th email, which is then a survey. How have you found these emails, and indeed, what are you doing off the back of all this myriad of opportunity that we've presented to you? So that is an interesting approach. But then, as I say, we end up in the world of measurement. So, okay, we've taken people through this program. How did they do? Okay, there is a big difference between what people say and what they do. And that's where, for me, when we're creating these breadcrumb environments of getting people to share on social, getting people to click through to booking forms, when we're getting them to tell us who they are and self-select into various different segmentations for age, demographic, etc., those are all measurable insights which you can use to demonstrate success, or indeed to find where you perhaps need to optimize. Okay, so in very simple terms, what did they click? And obviously the beauty of click tracking with email is specifically who it is. So if you've done this well and you've built through that introduction, done the segmentation, and then communicated with people effectively, you should be able to tell exactly who has interacted with what content on their journey towards the behavior change that you want. The other way we tend to look at it from a campaign perspective is we tend to look at it quite holistically. So, I always get asked, what's a good open rate? What's a good click-through rate on an email? And the simple answer is I don't care. But what I do want to see is engagement overall. So even if they don't read every email, the fact that they are engaging in some of the communications lends us to believe that we are nudging people in the right direction. So that's where we quite simply have a measurement on the platform. Are people engaged, slipping away, or indeed disengaged? Are they active in the program or not? Okay, so as I say, in a very short space of time, I just wanted to give you that blueprint. Make sure your introduction is straightforward. Then you can segment. Once you've segmented, address the capability and the opportunity aspects with them, and those two things match. Okay, now you've told us a little bit more about you. Let's challenge your beliefs as to I can't do this, and indeed show you the opportunities to get active in the area. And then, like I say, the longer term play then is driving them, keeping them motivated, gamification and other techniques to ensure they stick with it. And then you measure the outcome of that from the perspective of how people engage, not just in a single email or even 1, 2, or 3, but over the course of many emails, perhaps over 6 months or a year plus.